Okay, and here we have another tricky problem about finding the area between two curves. So this time we're finding the area between 3x and 4 root x. So it's asking us to find, if you plot this out in your calculator, you can see that we're trying to find this area right here. Now, as I've already written some of what we're going to do out, the first thing we want to do is find the endpoints. We want to find the x value of this point, and we want to find the x value of that point. And so there's kind of two different ways you could find these endpoints. One is just by using your calculator, and you're pretty safe doing that. Another way is by factoring. And so the factoring with this problem is kind of particularly tricky. So I'm going to show you one of the ways that you could do that. So for finding the endpoints, you want to set the two curves equal to each other. So we'd set 3x is equal to 4 root x, and don't divide things out. At this point, one kind of quicker way you could do it is you could square each side, and it would look a lot more like the last problem. Now, if you didn't see that you could do that, there is another way that you could do it that I'll cover at the very end of the video just in case you're curious. But let's just say we're going to square each side. So what will we get? We'll get 9x squared on this side, and on this side we'll get 16x. Now, to solve this, we would write 0 is equal to 16x minus 9x squared. And then factoring here, all we can actually factor out is an x. So we'll have x and then 16 minus 9x. So our two choices here are x is equal to 0, that's my left, or we'd have 16 minus 9x is equal to 0, which tells me that x is equal to 16 over 9. And again, so this is my left, and this is my right endpoint. Now, what is my next step? Well, I just use that same format I did before. So I'm going to go, step 2 is I just want to write the integral from my left endpoint, 0, to my right endpoint, 16 over 9. And then in the middle here, I'm going to have my top function, which in this case is 4 root x, and then I'm going to do minus my bottom function, which is just 3x, and then I'll have dx. So from here, you would use your calculator or approximation if you were instructed to do. Now, what's the other way you could have solved this? So this is not going to be as obvious, but it's probably a good practice for you. You will take 4 root x, and we want to set that equal to 3x. Now, in the above example, and when we did it before, we squared each side, and that made factoring a lot easier. The thing you really want to avoid doing is dividing, and we're not going to do that. We'll set 0 is equal to 3x minus 4 root x. And now when we factor, what we're going to actually factor out is a root x. And so what we need to think is we need to say, all right, so I need to be able to work backwards. So if I take root x times whatever is in here, I should be able to get this up here. So I know I'll have like a minus 4, right? Because root x times 4 is equal to 4 root x. Now, I need something here, though, that when I multiply it by root x, I get 3x. And that actually ends up being 3 root x. And the reason for this is that root x is really x to the 1/2, right? So we really have x to the 1/2 times 3x to the 1/2 minus 4. And we can multiply this out, so I'll get 3x to the 1/2 times x to the 1/2 minus 4 x to the 1/2. Now, since these things have a common base, it's an algebra rule that since we have x to a power times x to a power, I can do 3x to the 1/2 plus 1/2 minus 4x to the 1/2, and I'll get 3x minus 4 root x, just like I wanted. Okay, so the big thing that I actually want you to make sure you pay attention to is to solve this equation, you usually have to factor. It's a little bit easier this time if you square beforehand. If you didn't, though, it's good to know that you can pull out a root x and you'll get the same thing. So here we'd have root x is equal to 0, which tells me that x is equal to 0. Or we'd have 3 root x minus 4 is equal to 0, which would tell me that root x is equal to 4 over 3. And you'd square each side and then realize that x is equal to 16 over 9, just like before.